Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're going deep into U.S.-India economic relations today,
Oh, excellent.
using a 2014 report
Okay.
from AmCham, Deloitte, and the American Chamber of Commerce in India. So
Right.
by the end, hopefully you'll understand this partnership better.
Sounds good.
The players, the potential, the hurdles.
It's a fascinating report, like
Yeah.
a roadmap for doing business in India.
So let's set the stage.
Okay.
What's the big picture?
Well, the report makes India look like a potential gold mine for U.S. companies,
Wow.
especially in sectors like food processing,
Okay.
civil aviation, energy, healthcare, and defense.
Big ones.
It's not just hype either.
Really?
There are real numbers.
Oh,
Like, India's on track to be the world's third largest aviation market by 2020.
wow.
Huge potential for U.S. companies there,
Like Boeing?
or even logistics companies like FedEx.
That sounds promising.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing it's not all smooth sailing.
Well, you're right.
Okay.
There are headwinds.
Uh-oh.
The report talks about the challenges, bureaucratic inefficiencies, regulations, unclear policies,
Got it.
all impacting investor confidence.
So what's the solution?
Well,
Does the report offer any guidance?
it does.
Okay.
It suggests a more holistic approach from the Indian government.
Yeah.
Imagine different ministries actually working together on economic policy.
That'd be nice.
Right. This could mean faster decisions, smoother project implementation, and a more stable business environment.
Makes sense.
It's about predictability and transparency.
So it's not just about the opportunities, it's about making sure they can actually happen.
Exactly.
The environment needs to be right.
And this is where the report gets even more interesting.
Okay.
It zooms in on specific sectors,
Okay.
analyzes the potential and the pitfalls.
Got it.
Let's start with the regulatory environment, specifically taxation.
Taxation, always fun.
Yeah,
I bet that's where those bureaucratic hurdles come in.
you bet. The report looks at India's tax structure and doesn't hold back on the concerns for U.S. investors,
Like what?
like retrospective tax law amendments.
Oh, no.
Imagine changing the rules after the game started.
Right.
And then those long dispute resolution processes
Yeah.
can tie businesses up for years.
So it's not just about high taxes, it's the uncertainty, the lack of
Mhm.
transparency
Exactly.
makes it tough to operate.
And there are specific areas of concern, too.
Like what?
Transfer pricing.
Okay.
Real headache for multinational companies.
Yeah.
And U.S. exporters having trouble getting timely service tax refunds.
Sounds like a maze, especially for companies new to India.
It can be.
Yeah.
And the report mentions a lack of consultation with U.S. trade bodies on these tax and finance issues.
So no map, no guide.
Pretty much.
So communication and collaboration are key, even at this level.
Absolutely.
Makes sense.
Let's change gears now
Okay.
and talk about a sector with huge potential,
Okay.
but also turbulence.
Yeah.
Civil aviation.
Oh, right. You mentioned India is going to be a big player in aviation.
Right.
What are the opportunities and obstacles for U.S. companies?
Imagine providing everything from aircraft to maintenance to ground handling equipment.
Yeah.
The potential's there.
Okay.
But those FDI caps on foreign direct investment have been a roadblock.
Right.
And then high taxes on aviation turbine fuel, ATF,
Oh, yeah.
adds to the cost of flying.
And what about airport infrastructure?
Another valid point.
Okay.
The report says it's inadequate,
Not surprising.
and it suggests developing low-cost airports
Okay.
to increase connectivity,
Makes sense.
reducing those ATF taxes to make flying more affordable,
Okay.
and promoting open skies agreements,
Potentially.
essentially allowing more flights between the U.S. and India.
So like more options, more competition,
Exactly.
potentially lower fares.
Good for airlines, good for passengers.
That makes sense.
It's about removing barriers, letting market forces drive growth.
Okay, so that same principle applies to other sectors too, like energy.
Okay.
Did you know India is projected to be the world's largest oil importer by 2020?
Wow, that's huge.
It is.
I can see why energy would be a major focus
It is.
for both countries.
And the good news is the U.S.-India energy dialogue is already happening.
Okay.
A platform for collaboration.
Fun.
Everything from clean energy to energy efficiency.
Okay.
Imagine U.S. companies like First Solar playing a role in India's renewable energy push.
Solar panels and all that.
Exactly.
Sounds promising.
It does.
But I'm sure there are challenges in energy too.
Right.
Okay.
The report mentions overdependence on imports as a vulnerability for India
Okay.
and the need for better fuel supply infrastructure
Makes sense.
and more clarity on pricing policies.
So ambiguity for investors.
Exactly.
So huge potential, but significant challenges.
It's a mixed bag.
Okay.
And this brings us to another sector,
Okay.
food processing.
Food processing.
India's industry is valued at around US $150 billion.
And they're very open to foreign investors.
How so?
They offer 100% automatic route approval for FDI in most segments,
Automatic route approval.
meaning foreign companies don't need to go through a long approval process to invest.
So they can just set up shop.
Pretty much.
Wow, that's a big incentive
It is.
to attract capital and expertise.
Exactly.
So what's the catch?
Well, there are bottlenecks.
Oh,
The report points them out: inadequate infrastructure,
okay.
complex regulatory systems because of the Food Safety and Standards Act,
Got it.
and limited access to credit and modern technology.
So even with the open door, there are still hurdles
There are.
to clear
Um,
structural and regulatory ones.
And the report recommends a more holistic approach,
Okay.
focusing on technology transfer, supply chain improvements, and those mega food park initiatives.
Mega food parks.
Think of a massive complex.
Okay.
Everything from processing units to cold storage to testing labs,
All in one place.
an integrated ecosystem to boost efficiency,
Wow.
reduce waste, and attract more investment.
So it's about creating a supportive environment for the entire industry.
That's a great way to put it.
It's not just isolated investments.
And we see this theme of integration in other sectors too, like
Okay.
healthcare.
Healthcare, a big one.
Huge potential in India,
Yeah.
but the report highlights some roadblocks,
Okay.
regulatory hurdles,
Mhm.
limited FDI in insurance and retail pharmacy,
Oh, right.
and price controls on essential drugs.
Those cause tension, right?
They do.
With U.S. pharmaceutical companies.
Impacts profitability, discourages investment,
Yeah.
and this ties into intellectual property rights protection.
Okay.
Big concern for U.S. pharma companies,
Makes sense.
wanting to protect their innovations and R&D investments.
So it's a balancing act,
It is.
ensuring affordable healthcare for Indians,
Right.
but also a sustainable environment for businesses.
To operate and innovate.
Right.
A tough one.
It is.
The report suggests some solutions, though.
Like what?
Tax benefits for hospital expansion,
Okay.
streamlining medical device regulations,
Makes sense.
and addressing those profitability concerns.
Across the industry.
Pharmaceuticals, retail, insurance.
A complex puzzle
It is.
with lots of pieces.
And this complexity is even bigger in the defense sector.
Defense.
India is the world's largest arms importer,
Wow.
and the U.S. is a key partner.
I can see why that's a major area of collaboration.
Shared security concerns.
Right.
But even here, there are challenges.
Uh-oh, what kind?
The report points to delays in contract approvals,
Yeah, okay.
ambiguities in offset policies.
Those agreements where some money is reinvested in India.
Right.
Okay.
And the need for more clarity on FDI beyond the current 26% cap.
So those themes of transparency and predictability, again,
They keep coming up.
they do.
But what's interesting is the report goes beyond just selling weapons.
Go.
It talks about using defense offsets to actually boost India's economy and industry.
That's a different way to look at it.
It is.
Not just security, but a catalyst for development. Smart.
And the report specifically mentions promoting dual-use technologies.
Good.
Technologies with applications in both military and civilian sectors.
Okay.
Like technology from fighter jets being used to improve commercial aircraft safety
Oh.
or enhancing communication networks.
So defense investments with spillover benefits.
Exactly.
That's a great place to pause for now.
Okay.
We'll be back in part 2 to explore more sectors
Sound good.
and unpack some of the report's recommendations.
Looking forward to it.
So grab a chai, get comfortable, and we'll see you soon for more on U.S.-India economic engagement.
See you then.
Welcome back to our deep dive.
Into U.S.-India economic relations.
We've covered a lot,
We have.
but there's still so much more.
There is.
I'm really interested to hear more about those specific sectors the report dives into.
Yeah, it's fascinating how it goes beyond the usual suspects.
The usual suspect.
Like tech and healthcare.
Right.
And looks at sectors that are often overlooked,
Cool.
but crucial for India's growth.
Like what?
Like banking and financial services.
Okay.
The backbone of any economy.
Right.
And India's financial services sector has been growing a lot.
It has.
Yeah, strong macroeconomics, financial liberalization.
So as India's middle class grows,
Exactly.
more people need financial services.
The demand just skyrockets.
Makes sense.
So what's this mean for U.S. companies?
Yeah. What opportunities and challenges?
Well, there's a huge market for U.S. banks and financial institutions looking to expand globally,
Right.
but there are a few wrinkles.
Oh, no. Like what?
Like the Reserve Bank of India pushing for local incorporation
Okay.
for foreign banks with a big presence in India,
So what does that mean?
like Citibank and Bank of America.
Okay.
They might need to set up subsidiaries in India instead of just branches,
Oh, great.
which can be costly and complex.
Yeah. More than just setting up a branch and starting operations.
And then there's priority sector lending.
Hmm.
That guidelines that require foreign banks to lend a certain percentage to specific sectors,
Yeah.
agriculture, small businesses,
Okay.
meant to promote inclusive growth.
Right.
But it can be tough for banks that focus on niche markets,
So they need to adjust.
adjust their lending practices.
Interesting. So it's a balancing act,
It is.
navigating regulations, but tapping into this huge market.
Exactly.
Okay.
And speaking of regulations,
Okay.
the report also looks at insurance,
Insurance, another big one.
another area of interest for U.S. companies.
Okay.
But again, there's a catch.
Okay.
FDI in insurance is capped at 26%.
So U.S. company,
Can only own a minority stake
Okay.
in an Indian insurance company.
and they won.
They'd like to see that cap raised to 49%.
So they'd have more control.
More influence.
Another example of those FDI caps.
It is, but the report suggests exploring other options.
Like-
Alternative licensing regimes
Okay.
and distribution channels
Okay.
to overcome this, like bank assurance.
What's that?
Banks partnering with insurance companies.
Oh.
Banks sell insurance through their branches.
Oh, that's smart.
It gives insurance companies access to more customers.
Even with the FDI cap,
Right.
they can still expand.
Through these partnerships.
That's clever.
Finding creative solutions
Yeah.
that work for both sides.
It's like a game of chess,
It is.
figuring out the best moves within the rules.
And that strategic thinking is important for the defense sector, too.
Okay.
Especially those defense offsets.
Right. There's agreements where part of the contract value,
Is reinvested in the Indian economy.
but how can those be used strategically?
Well, the report says they can be more than just fulfilling obligations.
Okay.
They can boost India's economy and industry.
Really?
Yeah.
Tell me more.
The report suggests promoting dual-use technologies
Those are the ones.
with military and civilian applications,
What?
like technology from fighter jets
Yep.
used to improve commercial aircraft safety
Oh, right.
or enhance communication networks.
So defense spending can stimulate innovation and technology transfer.
Exactly.
Benefits the broader economy.
And the report also talks about the software sector.
Of course, India is strong in IT.
Right. Imagine U.S. defense contractors partnering with Indian software companies.
To develop new technologies.
A win-win.
It is.
Looking beyond immediate defense needs.
And fostering a more strategic partnership.
So we've talked about banking, insurance, defense.
Right. What other sectors?
One that's often misunderstood
Okay.
is direct selling.
Like Amway, Tupperware,
Exactly.
those companies that rely on independent distributors?
Selling directly to consumers.
Yeah, but what's the problem?
Well, in India, direct selling gets lumped in with multi-level marketing.
Those pyramid schemes.
Exactly, the ones that promise quick riches
Right.
that often leave people with nothing.
So reputational issue for direct selling.
And this lack of clarity
Yeah.
has caused problems for legitimate U.S. companies in India,
Yeah.
challenges with FDI policy.
Even the threat of being penalized under laws meant to curb pyramid schemes.
So they're caught in the crossfire?
Pretty much.
The report's pretty clear on this,
It is.
Me
It's
too.
established a separate legal framework for direct selling
to distinguish it.
from those MLM schemes.
So a more predictable environment.
But legitimate companies,
And speaking of a conducive environment,
right?
let's talk about e-payments.
E-payments.
It's evolving rapidly in India,
driven by the government's push for financial inclusion,
bringing more people into the formal system.
Mhm.
I've read about that.
promoting digital payments.
Reducing reliance on cash
Logical
in a
stuff.
country like India.
But as the report highlights,
Oh.
there are hurdles. Limited POS infrastructure.
Those point-of-sale terminals.
Right. And technology integration issues.
Got it.
And the big one, Cybersecurity concerns.
Right, with sensitive financial data.
Exactly.
A valid concern.
The report proposes a multi-pronged approach.
Okay, like incentivizing electronic transactions through the tax structure.
Okay.
Maybe tax breaks for businesses that accept digital payments.
Interesting.
And promoting micropayment solutions.
For small purchases.
Right.
So making e-payments convenient.
But also secure.
And trustworthy.
Exactly.
People need to feel confident
They do.
that their money's safe.
When transacting digitally.
Trust is essential.
For any financial system.
Especially new ones like e-payments.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And speaking of trust and security.
Okay.
Let's talk about Homeland Security.
Homeland Security, an area where U.S.-India collaboration is growing.
It is.
Shared security challenges in the region, globally.
The report highlights the opportunities for U.S. companies, India's Homeland Security market, which is projected to reach U.S. $18 billion by 2018.
Wow, that's a lot.
Everything from airport security to surveillance to cybersecurity solutions.
Big numbers, but I bet there are challenges here, too.
Of course. The report mentions fragmentation among authorities.
Different agencies working in silos.
Not sharing information effectively.
That's not
can create inefficiencies.
It's a security gap.
And then complex procurement processes.
Right.
A headache for U.S. companies.
Yeah.
And the need for a coordinated approach to security equipment development.
So making sure systems are compatible.
And can communicate with each other.
So back to those themes.
Transparency, streamlining, collaboration.
Right.
You're getting it.
It's a recurring theme.
It is.
Addressing those underlying issues.
To unlock the potential of the partnership, that brings us to another crucial sector, infrastructure.
Roads, bridges, airports, the whole shebang.
The foundation for everything else.
Right.
And India has big plans.
How big?
An estimated U.S. $1 trillion in investments.
Wow, that's mind-boggling.
Huge opportunities for U.S. companies.
I'm sure there are challenges, though.
Of course.
Land acquisition complexity.
Right.
Financing hurdles.
And those lopsided contract terms.
Favoring the project owner.
Creating risks for investors.
So those structural and regulatory roadblocks.
That can stifle progress.
Even with all that potential.
But don't lose hope.
The report has solutions.
It does. Streamlining land acquisition and permitting.
Okay.
Facilitating infrastructure financing.
How?
Maybe public-private partnerships.
Okay.
Or new financing models.
Interesting.
And ensuring more equitable contract terms.
So win-win.
For investors and the Indian economy.
That's a tall order.
It is.
But achievable with the right commitment.
You're right.
From both sides.
It's about recognizing this relationship isn't just about quick profits.
Right.
It's about a long-term partnership.
That creates jobs, stimulates innovation, drives economic growth.
They're both countries.
Seeing beyond those immediate transactions.
Building a more strategic partnership.
That's a great point.
And on that note, we'll pause here and look at the report's recommendations.
Key takeaways.
In Part 3.
I'm excited to hear more. Stay tuned, folks, for the grand finale of our exploration. Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive.
Into the U.S.-India economic relationship.
We've covered those big picture ideas.
The opportunities.
The challenges.
Right.
And we looked at those specific sectors.
In detail.
So what does the report recommend?
Well, this is where it really gets interesting.
Okay.
It's not just diagnosing the issues.
Right.
But offering solutions.
Okay, so what are they?
One key theme throughout the report is the need for more dialogue and collaboration.
Between the U.S. and India.
Exactly.
So going beyond those one-off deals.
Building a more strategic partnership.
So less transactional.
More relational.
Like those high-level talks we see.
The strategic dialogue.
The energy dialogue.
Those are a good start.
Okay.
But the report says to go further.
How so?
Establishing sector-specific working groups.
Oh, okay.
Task forces.
To tackle those more specific issues.
The ones that get missed.
So bringing in the experts.
From both sides.
Tax specialists, aviation regulators, healthcare professionals.
Getting into the details.
Finding common ground.
A more collaborative approach.
Okay, so dialogue is key.
It is.
Right.
Regulatory reform is crucial.
Okay.
The report really stresses the need for more transparency.
Predictability.
In India's regulatory environment.
Like those retrospective tax law amendments.
Right. Creating uncertainty.
Making it hard to plan for the long term.
Like trying to hit a moving target.
Exactly.
The report suggests moving away from those ad hoc changes.
Okay.
Establishing a more consistent framework.
Clear rules.
That everyone understands.
So U.S. companies, foreign investors,
and can feel confident.
knowing the rules won't suddenly change,
Right.
leveling the playing field.
And along with that, streamlining those bureaucratic processes.
Those lengthy approvals,
Layers of bureaucracy.
bogging things down,
Deterring investment.
like running a marathon through quicksand.
The report suggests a more digital approach, using technology.
Online portals, tracking progress.
To make things smoother, more efficient.
So more transparency, less frustration.
And this focus on efficiency extends to dispute resolution, too.
Okay, those long, costly legal battles.
Draining resources.
Creating uncertainty.
A nightmare for businesses.
Especially smaller ones.
The report suggests alternatives. Arbitration, mediation.
Faster, less adversarial.
More win-win outcomes.
So, finding solutions, not getting stuck in legal battles.
Exactly.
And beyond these broad recommendations, there are sector-specific ones too.
In aviation, for example.
Okay.
Develop more low-cost airports.
Okay.
Reduce taxes on aviation fuel.
Practical steps.
To boost growth in a sector with huge potential.
Makes sense.
And in energy.
Energy, right.
Address those fuel supply infrastructure constraints.
Okay.
Provide more clarity on pricing policies.
So attracting more investment.
Especially in clean energy and renewables.
And those mega food parks. The report recommends technology transfer. Supply chain improvements.
To strengthen India's food processing sector.
So building a more competitive industry.
That could have a ripple effect.
Creating jobs.
Boosting agriculture.
Enhancing food security.
Exactly.
And in healthcare.
Healthcare is crucial.
Streamline medical device regulations.
Address those profitability concerns.
Right, the price controls on drugs.
It's a tough issue.
With ethical considerations, too.
Finding that balance
between affordable healthcare
and a sustainable business environment.
A puzzle with many pieces.
But worth solving.
And defense.
Leveraging those defense offsets.
For economic and industrial progress.
A smart strategy.
And direct selling companies.
A clear legal framework.
To distinguish them from those MLM schemes.
Give them the support they need.
And e-payments.
Incentivize electronic transactions.
Promote those micropayment solutions.
Prioritize consumer protection.
So a secure and trustworthy digital payment ecosystem.
Exactly.
And lastly, Homeland Security.
Closer collaboration.
Streamlining procurement.
Encouraging private sector participation.
Building a strategic partnership.
To address those shared security challenges.
So, some common threads here.
Transparency.
Predictability.
Collaboration.
Efficiency.
And a recognition that this is about more than just deals.
It's about a stronger relationship.
For both countries.
You've really summed it up.
Moving beyond the headlines.
Tackling those fundamental challenges.
Creating an environment where businesses can thrive.
Innovation can flourish.
And both countries benefit.
So that's it for our deep dive
into U.S.-India economic relations.
We've given you a glimpse into this complex world.
Based on this 2014 report.
But remember, things are always changing.
Stay curious.
Stay engaged.
And maybe you'll be shaping this partnership in the future.
And we'll be here for your next deep dive.
Into whatever fascinating topic you choose.
Until then, happy exploring.